My name is Hunter-Pirtle, and I've been following politics for 20 years. I was 14 when the Bush v. Gore election captured the nation's attention in 2000, and like only an 8th grader could, I announced to my parents and classmates that I could do better than either candidate, and that someday I would. I studied political science at the University of Nebraska in my hometown, and then I worked on environmental policy at the White House from 2011 to 2013, and served as a speechwriter to a cabinet member from 2014 to 2016. In the summer of 2012, when I was working at the White House, there was a severe drought in the Midwest and South. My boss was in charge of the US government's drought task force, and I walked into my first task force meeting to a very long table with about 30 real serious sub-cabinet officials sitting around it. And I felt tense because I was maybe the most junior person in the room, and because I didn't really know what anyone could do about a drought. I just knew that even the federal government couldn't make it rain. But I came away from those meetings with a glimpse into the thousands of actions that government could take to help people through a crisis. Weight restrictions could be relaxed on federal highways so that trucks could haul more feed to keep herds alive. More federal lands could be open for grazing. River dams and locks could be opened to get more water to where it was most needed. At the White House, we called those actions policy. But for some farmers and ranchers in 2012, they meant the difference between staying on their family farms and going bankrupt. My friends and I reflect that during those years, we gained something close to a superpower, an unshakable knowledge that our voices mattered, that we had ideas worth listening to, and that we could change the world. Because every day for 5 years, we saw the evidence of it. We witnessed our voices shape major decisions and even influence national events. Fast forward to 2020. It's an election year unlike any other, and we've been hearing an awful lot about voting lately. There are a growing number of barriers to voting in the United States. Dark money in politics, gerrymandering, and burgeoning voter suppression efforts. And we're living through a pandemic and the worst recession of our lifetimes. Millions of Americans are feeling like their voices don't matter. When that's the case, it makes people less likely to vote. And I fear that telling people incessantly to vote without addressing these underlying challenges will backfire. We could easily have a TED Talk on each of these barriers, but today I want to zero in on the one piece of this puzzle that is in our individual control, and that is cultivating an unwavering belief in the value of our own voices. It sounds simple, maybe even trite, but it's absolutely essential to protecting our democracy. I need to acknowledge here the tremendous privilege I had to be validated this way in my early 20s. It's a type of affirmation most people never experience. I have white privilege, middle-class privilege that allowed me to start at the White House by doing a 3-month unpaid internship, and a supportive family. I also applied to the White House internship program 3 times before I got accepted. So please know, this isn't me saying if I can do this, anyone can. There are barriers in front of millions of Americans who are equally deserving that make it difficult to access the experiences I had. I also got to say that in the Black Lives Matter protests this summer, we've seen a new generation of activists step into their power, and it's been awe-inspiring. As activist and writer Adrienne Marie Brown says, things are not getting worse, they're getting uncovered. We need to hold each other tight and continue to pull back the veil. Nobody needs validation from me, some white lady, to take up space and make change. That said, I do know something about cultivating confidence in your own ideas. So if you are someone who doesn't feel confident talking politics, who doesn't feel at home at a protest, or contacting your elected officials, or maybe even voting, I'd like to offer a secret to always knowing your voice matters, and I'm here to share it in a way that anyone can use. It starts with asking yourself a few simple questions and repeating the exercise on a regular basis until you know the answers in your bones. What do you know? Not just what's your area of expertise, but you're the expert on your own life. What's it like to be a single parent, to have overcome abuse or addiction, or to be a caregiver for your aging parents? Whatever your lived experience is, that's your expertise. What matters to you? What values do you live by every day? For many people, it's things like hard work, family, responsibility, honesty. Or you can ask yourself, what would make your life a little easier right now? What if childcare was more affordable? Or you didn't have debt from medical bills? Or you didn't fear police brutality in your community? What are you curious about? Maybe you're not an expert on how to save the environment, but you know you care about the issue, and you're willing to do a little research using reputable sources to find out what steps you can personally take. How do you express yourself best? Maybe public speaking makes you nauseous, but you're a good writer. Maybe you have an interest or a background in theater or dance. When you're grounded in what you know, your own life, your values, your interests, and use them to guide your research, you can know you're speaking from a place of experience. Today, I run a nonprofit here in Lincoln called Stand for Schools that works to advance public education in Nebraska. We sometimes ask our supporters to contact their elected officials, and that contact from constituents is essential. But we, and most other policy and political professionals, need to work on creating ways for people to engage beyond just calling their senator. Because voting is important, but people are more than just voters. If I ask someone who's shy to contact their congressperson, they may really struggle. But if they're a talented photographer and I contract with them to take photos for the organization, then they're serving as an expert. They're sharing their talents in support of a cause they believe in. And that's the point. We all need to feel like experts sometimes. When we do, that's when we're most able to feel confident and give back. By being in conversation with yourself on a regular basis and finding ways to engage with causes you care about that are within your skill set, you can start to find your voice. Not all opinions are equally valid or supported by facts, but all people have inherent value. Make this self-dialogue a daily practice, and you can cultivate the confidence of knowing your worth. The world doesn't always give us the validation we want, need, or deserve. But as psychiatrist, author, and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote, when we're no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. We can give ourselves the validation the world declines to give us. These practices may be simple, but the stakes could not be higher. If we fail to address people's confidence in their worth, government's ability to represent them and their interests, and address the systemic issues that prevent people from voting, more and more folks will shut down before using their voices, and democracy will cease to exist. I gotta be honest with you, my biggest worry about doing this talk is that some people may think I'm saying they don't have to bother with voting. Quite the opposite. Voting is more essential now than it's ever been. What I am saying is that when politicians and pundits keep telling struggling people to vote without addressing their needs, it contributes to a perception that voting doesn't matter. But it does. When we fail to find our own voices, others speak for us. And that's when we begin staring down the kind of unimaginable yet avoidable hardship that's already happening in this country with the COVID-19 pandemic and recession. What I know for sure from working on 2 federal disaster responses in 5 years is this: hundreds of thousands of Americans dead is a choice our leaders are making. We still don't have a coherent federal response, or in Nebraska, a state one. So we as individuals need to get crystal clear on what conditions we will tolerate, what we'll demand of our leaders, and decide what we're willing to summon within ourselves to change the situation. I had the opportunity to talk to Michelle Obama once while interning at the White House. She told us that when she became First Lady, she quickly realized that even the smartest people in the room at the highest levels with the fanciest credentials were winging it to some degree every time they started a new job or encountered a new situation. It was their willingness to step up, to be comfortable with uncertainty, and to learn and adapt quickly that set them apart from others. Those are skills we can all cultivate. So why not us? Our self-belief, or lack of it, sets the stage for democracy in the same way. If we know we deserve good lives, a decent standard of living, our leaders' attention to the issues we care about, if we reject avoidable suffering and the leaders who traffic in it, then getting to success, a country that works for everyone, is a dream that's within reach. Skip the personal work, believe we deserve whatever happens to us, and that we have no control, and we'll end up with more rage, more division, and certainly more tragedy. So ask yourself, what do you know? What matters to you? How do you express yourself best? And one more thing. What kind of world do you want to live in? Those answers will guide you to know your worth, then vote. And also know that your value does not depend on the outcome. By following these steps, we can cultivate the confidence in our worth that's in our control to shape. And that is one way to start to truly be the change we wish to see in the world. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Ferial Pearson. I'm an assistant professor in the College of Education at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and I am here with a very special guest, and I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hunter-Pirtle. I'm the executive director of Stand for Schools, which is a nonprofit that works to advance public education in Nebraska. Ferial is a member of our board of directors, and we're very lucky to have her there. I started this organization after spending 5 years working in Washington, D.C. on environmental issues at the White House and the Environmental Protection Agency. And in the fall of 2020, I gave a TED talk on the political power of knowing your worth. And we're going to chat a little bit about that talk today and share some insights with you.
Thanks, Anne. I loved your TED Talk, and it's why I reached out and was like, hey, we need to get this TED Talk out to young people because from what I know as a high school teacher, as a mother of teenagers, teens are really powerful when it comes to being agents of change, right? And they're really in it right now with activism all over the world. And so my question to you after watching your TED Talk is it really that easy to engage?
um, what I think I would say, Ferial, is that it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. It's as simple as deciding that you want to be part of making change, and no matter where you are or who you are or what your life looks like, there are ways that you can do that where you are right now. It might be, depending where you live, it might be easier or harder to find opportunities that really excite you, or ways to engage that you feel like really fit your personality. But I promise you that everywhere around the world, they are there. So again, it's simple, not necessarily easy, but it's worth making that commitment to yourself and to the world around you. It's all about building the world that you want to live in.
I love that. And you've had a lot of experience with this yourself. You're still relatively young, right? And so I kind of want to know a little bit about you. How did you get started in advocacy and civic engagement, and how has your work changed throughout the years from when you were, a young teenager till now?
Yeah, I first got interested in advocacy when I was 13 years old, watching the U.S. presidential election in the year 2000, which is going to date me. Um, but I was watching these debates between George Bush and Al Gore, who were running that year, and they were very kind of snipey, and a lot of people felt like they were unprofessional, and like only a 13-year-old could. I was like, I could do better than that. And I decided that moment that one day I would, and I was going to get involved. And what that led me to do is when I was in high school, I got involved in the speech and debate team at my school. I was lucky that the team at my school was really strong. And so that was something that my peers started to kind of know me as, and it started to be like, oh, I guess I could do this. I guess I could use these skills in some way. And so I took that training and spent a few years, like I said, in Washington, D.C., working at the federal government level on environmental issues. And that was a dream come true. And it was tremendous to see how the activism that I and a lot of my friends had been part of in the 2008 presidential campaign actually moved the ball then on things we cared about, and to get to be in some of those rooms as those decisions were made when we were in our early 20s was really amazing. And it gave me this perspective that felt almost like a superpower, like I say in the TEDx talk, that was like, oh, this is actually doable. And it's a perspective that not a lot of people get to see, even though it's true. And so what I want people to know is that it sounds simple and cliched, but it's true. You really can make a difference wherever you are, no matter who you are. And maybe that looks like working for the federal government. Maybe that looks like um, going to your local city council meeting and speaking on behalf of an issue you care about. Maybe that means cleaning up a park near where you live. But all of those things are valuable, and they improve quality of life for a lot of people beyond just you.
Yeah. So you mentioned, being in those rooms where decisions are made, or as Hamilton says, in the room where it happens.
Right.
And a lot of the people who are in the room where it happens are people who are in political office. So, how do you know if you should run for office? Because I don't think there's an age minimum requirement in a lot of places to run for office. And we know that representation is really important, but how do you know if you really should run for office?
Yeah, I think two things. One, I think you should run if you want to, and if it's something that interests you and sounds energizing to you. And if it does, then great. Then that's something you can work toward. The other thing to keep in mind is that, unlike, the thing about dreaming about running for office is that, unlike being a famous actor or a rock star, you don't have to have made it by the time you're 25. Running for office is something you can do pretty much any time in your adult life. Most places, not everywhere, most places you have to be at least 18 to run, and sometimes there are other age limits for specific offices. But a lot of things you could do fairly young if you wanted to and really got organized. So that's one thing. I think if it energizes you and interests you, then that's awesome. And if not, then that's okay too. There are lots of other ways to be involved and engaged using whatever your interests are right now. If you love photography, you could, take photos of, the animals at a shelter that need adoption. Maybe the shelter needs help updating their website, and you can help them do that. There are lots of ways. You can be an architect that's helping make cities more, friendly for all kinds of people to live in. And so running for office is awesome. It's really important. It's something we hear about a lot these days. But it's definitely not the only way to contribute.
And the other thing is, you don't have to decide that right now. You might have no interest in running for office right at this moment. And when you're 35 or 40, you might change your mind, and that's okay. Um, Running for office should be done by a whole range of people with different backgrounds and experiences who can share and speak to what they know and their lived experience. And so you don't have to know right now. It's okay if you don't. But there are definitely ways to improve and change your community in positive ways right now using your current skills and interests, no matter who you are or where you live.
I love that. So we do the secret kindness agents, and a lot of the things that we say about kindness is exactly what you're saying about being engaged. Is figure out what your talents, your strengths, and your interests are, and then do what works well with those, so that it's enjoyable and you don't, burn out from doing what you want. And we call what we have our signature move, which is our favorite act of kindness, which can also change. And so I see yours as like your signature political move, is kind of what you're going to do to work with your strengths and your interests. So I want to thank you for sharing your TED Talk with the world, and for being here to speak a little bit more with the youth of our community. And I think you've definitely inspired me, and I'm sure you've inspired them as well to go out there and make change, whether it's small or big. But just to know that we're making a difference in the world and we're contributing to our communities in whatever way makes sense and is important to us. Do you have any last words for us?
Thank you so much, Ferial. I really appreciate this. I think I would just end on the note that, all of us can contribute to a vision of what kind of world we want to live in. And there are small and big steps that each of us can take, maybe not every single day, but on a regular basis to help build that world. And that really is doable for every person. So I think just keep that in mind.
Thanks so much, Anne, and have a great year.
You as well, Ferial.